My insulin pump said, critical low, treat immediately. But the exam proctor took it away and said, no devices during testing means no devices. The vibration against my hip was subtle at first, the kind I'd learned to recognize instantly, after 6 years of living with type 1 diabetes. But when the alarm started beeping, loud enough that the girl 2 seats over looked up from her test booklet, I knew I was in trouble. I glanced down at my Dexcom continuous glucose monitor, clipped to my waistband. The screen showed 58 mg/dl, bright red letters, with a downward arrow, critical low, treat immediately. I reached for the glucose tablets in my pocket, the ones I'd specifically shown to the testing coordinator that morning, the ones she'd approved with a bored nod, a check on her clipboard. Before my fingers even touched the package, a hand slammed down on my desk. Mrs. Valerie Novak, head proctor for the SAT testing site, Riverside High School, stood over me with her arms crossed, face twisted in suspicion. Electronic device, she said, pointing at my Dexcom. Hand it over right now, or your test is invalidated. I tried to explain, my words coming out slower than they should have, my brain already starting to fog from the low blood sugar. It's not a phone, it's my glucose monitor. I have type 1 diabetes. I showed it to the coordinator this morning. Mrs. Novak's expression didn't change. She'd been a proctor for 15 years. According to the introduction she'd given at the start, she'd seen every trick students tried to cheat. No devices during testing means no devices. I don't care what it is. Give it to me now, or I'm calling your test invalid, escorting you out. My hands were already starting to shake. I'd been diabetic since I was 12, diagnosed after a week of unexplained thirst, exhaustion. Parents initially blamed on volleyball practice, stress. The diagnosis came in the emergency room, after I'd collapsed during gym class. Blood sugar over 600 mg/dl. Since then, my life had been a careful balance. Insulin, carbohydrates, constant monitoring. The Dexcom CGM I wore was literally life-saving technology. Monitored my blood glucose levels every 5 minutes, sent the data to a receiver on my hip, an app on my phone. When my levels dropped too low or spiked too high, it alerted me, so I could treat the problem before it became a crisis. I'd worn it every day for the past 3 years, slept with it, showered with it, played volleyball with it, taped securely to my abdomen, and I'd brought extensive documentation to the SAT testing center that morning, specifically because I knew medical devices were a gray area in standardized testing protocols. The morning had started normally. I'd woken up at 6, checked my blood sugar on my meter, showed a solid 110 mg/dl, eaten my carefully calculated breakfast, oatmeal and a banana, dosed my insulin accordingly. My mom had driven me to Riverside High, even though I had my license, because she was nervous about the test, wanted to make sure I got there safely. I'd arrived at the check-in table at 7:15 for the 8 o'clock start time. The testing coordinator, Miss Brennan, tired-looking woman in her 30s, had reviewed my medical documentation, the letter from my endocrinologist, explaining my need for a continuous glucose monitor, access to fast-acting carbohydrates during the test. She'd initialed the letter, checked my Dexcom and glucose supplies, sent me to testing room 3B with a yellow sticker on my admission ticket, indicating approved medical accommodation. Everything had been fine for the first 90 minutes. The critical reading section had gone well, felt confident about my answers, brain sharp, focused. My Dexcom had shown steady numbers in the 120s perfect range, but somewhere during the transition to the math section, something had gone wrong. Maybe I'd miscalculated my breakfast insulin. Maybe the stress of the test was affecting my metabolism. Maybe my insulin pump had delivered too much, without me noticing, whatever the cause. By question 15 of the math section, my glucose levels had started dropping. I'd felt the first symptoms around 9:45, familiar tingling in my fingers, slight tremor in my hands, made holding my pencil harder. I'd checked my Dexcom discreetly, 89 mg/dl with a downward arrow. Not critical yet, but heading in the wrong direction. I'd popped 2 glucose tablets into my mouth, chewed them quickly, went back to my test. That should have been enough to stabilize me, except it wasn't. By 10 o'clock, my glucose had dropped to 72 mg/dl, still falling. I'd taken 2 more tablets. My hands were shaking noticeably now, sweat beading on my forehead, despite the air conditioning. The girl next to me kept glancing over, probably wondering why I was trembling. At 10:15, the Dexcom alarm went off, 58 mg/dl, critical low. That's when Mrs. Novak appeared at my desk. I sat there staring up at her, trying to make my foggy brain form coherent arguments. Please, I said, and I hated how my voice shook. I have documentation, medical accommodation. This isn't a phone, it's medical equipment. I need it. Mrs. Novak held out her hand. I don't know what you showed to whom, but I'm the head proctor for this room. I make the final decisions. That device is beeping, has a screen, could be used to receive information. It's a violation of testing security. Hand it over now, or leave the testing room. That's when my vision started to blur. Full story is linked